welcome to the January 2023 meeting of the Library Marketing Book Club. So this club's is in its third year, which is really cool, and really appreciate you all coming out. So this week this month we read Atomic Habits by James Clear. So and did ask James if he was able to join us. Unfortunately he wasn't, but got some good bonus content. If you read the book, and if you have the book, I recommend you do go and check out the bonus content. You can see a lot of stuff on the website, and there's also some things that you can download, and we'll talk about some of that stuff. Or there's a lot of tools that relate to a lot of things that we'll talk about today. So trying out this format. This worked okay last time. So I will just go through the book. We'll just review. I'll review it. If you have questions or suggestions or input or feedback or anything at all that you'd like to say, raise your hand, put something in the chat, or just shout out. But yeah, so we'll just go through this book, and and then we can talk about what y'all thought. So the book, how many, if we can get a show, how many did get a chance to read the book, and how many didn't get a chance to read it, or how many did get a chance to read it? Couple. Okay, very good. No worries if you didn't. Always plenty of time to read it, and I think you'll still get something out of the discussion of the book as we talk about it today. Yeah, Mary, you read it and you think you need to reread it. Yeah, I think somebody else mentioned in the thing that they'd read it a while ago. And yeah, it's been out for a few years. Very popular book. So the author starts out talking about a traumatic accident that he had when he was a child. He was a baseball player, and he got smashed in the face with a baseball bat. So it broke up his face, and really kind of ruined everything for him for a long time, and took him a while to come back from that. But while he didn't really get back to any sort of level of playing or academics when he was in high school, when he went to college, he did say that that's where he started to do some small habits, and those led to a lot of real success in academics and in sports. So he performed very well. He got wonderful accolades, and got to participate in a lot of really excellent things in that. And it was a lot due to these small habits. And the overall theme of the book is that it's not about big changes. It's about just getting 1% better is kind of thing that comes up a lot. So it's 1% better, and that compounded over time will add up to a lot. And he gives a great example in the early part of the book that a lot of this takes patience. And I think we all know this in library marketing, that a lot of things that we do take a lot of patience. So I thought that was kind of interesting. If you think of an ice cube, and it's in a field that's 27 degrees, and it's still an ice cube, and 28, and it's still an ice cube, and 29, 30, 31. And it's not until it hits 32 that it may actually start to show signs of melting. So there's a lot of little things that add up to the big change that happens later. But if it didn't go through all those degrees, if the temperature didn't rise through all those degrees, it wouldn't get to where a change happened. Another main theme of the book is not focusing so much on goals. He talks about not focusing on like winning a championship, but focus instead on the system of a coach to recruit players and manage assistant coaches and practice. So you don't And this thing is, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. You're only as good and successful and have as much progress as your systems do. And there's some things later in the book that he talks about that are some pitfalls of setting goals. But it's more about, again, these little habits and just practicing, continuing, and that will help you accumulate success. And this other theme in the book, introduced in the beginning, is that habits are about shaping your identity. And I think this one is pretty neat. He talks about it's not about the thing you're doing, but it's about becoming the kind of person you want to become. So it's not, and this particular example I really liked a lot, and I want to use it somehow in some work that we're doing with the brand of the library. But it's not, you don't want to read a book, you want to become a reader. So it's not just about doing the one thing, it's about becoming the thing. And we're doing some things right now with this videos where we're showing, we're calling them passion for reading, and people showing how they're passionate about reading. And that is a real interesting way to couch this series of videos, is that it's not about just the one thing, not about just picking up a book and reading it, but it's about doing the things that help you become a reader. So, so here's a discussion question that that the author gave, which is there's a part in here where he talks about not only about the identity, but it's about identities that you might have adopted that might be holding you back. So, for example, people will say, "Oh, I'm terrible at math," or "I'm not a morning person," and that negative self-talk about creating a negative identity can be very impactful. So, what ways would you say that either you do that, or you see that happen, or you do that with, or your library does that, and how could that negative self-talk be reframed to be more empowering and positive? Anybody want to jump in on that question or anything we've talked about so far? Everybody's got, hey, Danielle.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but the
Sure.
statement about, you know, you don't rise to the level of your goals, but you fall to the level of your processes. That was almost comforting to me. I don't know, in some way, because it was like, it just really connected. In marketing, we set all these goals, right? And it's like, I feel like I'm really good at setting these goals, but I I set the goal, but like, how are you going to reach the goal? Like that actionable piece. And if you don't have a good system, a good framework, like you're not going to be able to reach that goal. So it was almost like, okay, so it's not, that I'm setting these lofty goals. Let's just break this down a notch and work on the systems, which seems more achievable. So
Yeah, I agree, Danielle. Yeah, it is interesting. It's, yeah, because we do talk about, oh, we want to get this result and we want to get that result, and it can become really frustrating. It can become very difficult to get to this, but and it seems, doesn't it seem too like sometimes that sets an expectation, and then I don't know, yeah, like we get uh, sometimes the library leadership has expectations. The one that I think in this same way, Danielle, is when you have a social media page and people expect certain things to be happening and going up on that social media page, and so they have these goals in mind of how much engagement and how, and those kind of things that they see, but it's really more about being consistent, being there regularly, and over time, it takes patience, but over time it'll build. So yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. So um yeah, and I know there is the self-talk, and I've talked about it before about people not having confidence in their abilities in marketing and libraries because it maybe isn't where they came up through a marketing thing. But talking, not trying to talk yourself down as a marketer can really affect you. And I think that people do need to have more confidence in what they do, and share what they do. Hey, Christina.
So I just wanted to say on that note, Chris, that
Yeah.
one of the habits that I changed was making sure I came into work with a positive mindset. And so instead, I stopped listening to the radio driving in, and I listened to affirmations. So I
That's
have like a
great.
playlist where I find things that resonate for me, and kind of get me in a good place as I come in the morning. I don't do it every morning. Sometimes I just like being, I'm a silent kind of also person, but the affirmations really put you in a good place where you think that this is okay. This is, gets you where I feel like it helps me. So.
Yeah, that's awesome, Christina. Yeah, because and I think maybe maybe what you're talking about is in contrast to listening to things like, even morning radio, which has a lot of news and a gossip and a lot of stuff like that, which can be interesting and engaging, but also it can be frustrating. It can be challenging to hear some things, and yeah, so I love that idea of listening to an affirmation. That is really cool and puts you right in the right mindset to get here. Hey, Lisa.
Hello. What you said earlier about holding on to identities that might be holding us back. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not a morning person. It made me think of how a lot of times at libraries we say, "Oh, we don't do that here," or "We've done it like X
Yeah.
before. We can't change this." So on a larger level, that just made me think of that. We often do.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point, Lisa. It's because it's not just in ourselves, but it's also in our culture and in where we're surrounded with. Yeah, there's a lot of times where we talk about, things that we can't do and kind of box ourselves in. But well, yeah, we don't do that. We don't do that. And yeah, better to find solutions, better to look for things more positive. So that's great. Yeah, it's awesome. So just to keep going through the book, thanks everybody. So it's about deciding the type of person you want to be, and that term comes up again. Are you the type of person who, and prove it with small wins. And then he talks in the book. So we read, if you were here, I don't remember. It was probably a couple of years ago, actually. We read both Nir Eyal's book on habits, and we also read the Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And a lot of the stuff, he even remarks that a lot of the stuff is very similar. So then he just talks about like the cue, the craving, the response, and the reward, and that typical cycle of habits that if you hadn't heard it before, it's something here. If you hadn't gotten a chance to read the book, but I think it's very intuitive. There's the cue, a hint, which is the way that he describes it, is it's a hint that we're close to the word we're trying to get. The craving, you don't crave the habit, you crave the change in state. So you don't crave smoking a cigarette, you crave the relief that provides you. And then the response is the actual habit that you perform, and the reward satisfies your craving. Not only does it satisfy your craving, it also teaches you which actions are worth remembering. So that's why doing things to adjust your habits will help you. You can help build good habits by learning which actions are the ones worth remembering. Then he goes into this 4 laws of behavior change. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. So the 4 things that kind of go along with the behavior change. And I'll go through some of the make it obvious. In the make it obvious, he had this interesting thing, and I thought I kind of tried it. It's weird. That on I think it was in Japan, on the train system there, that when they do things, they point it out and they call it out. So they would point to something and they would say, check, this thing happened, or this door is closed, this platform is clear, we're ready to go. And it's the act of pointing and calling that helps you develop that awareness of a habit that you're doing. So it's not just not just a rote habit that you're not doing. And there's a lot of talk in the book about that too, about not just kind of getting into the motion of doing habits, but actually going through and being aware of what those habits are and continuously improving on those habits. He talks then about using some type of a thing to create a habit scorecard. So there is, and that's one thing that's in the bonus materials and something that's online. And it's just kind of taking a look through your day and seeing all the little habits you do, all the little habitual actions you do, everything from getting up to taking a shower to eating breakfast, and all the little habits that you do. So you can become more aware of the kind of habits that you have. And this one in particular, I thought was really good. And that's how to start a new habit. So there was a study done where there were 3 groups of people. And the first group, they were all tracking, I think it was exercise, how much they exercised. So the first group, they were just told to track how much they exercise over the next week. The second group was told not only to track how much they exercise, they were also given a bunch of information about exercise, how it's good for your heart and all that kind of stuff. The third group was told all that same stuff, but they were also told to write down when they were going to exercise, where, and where they were going to exercise over the next week. So they would write down, do 20 minutes of vigorous exercise on Wednesday at 1 p.m. In the gym near my house. And the 2 groups that didn't have that commitment only had about 38% success, but the group that actually wrote it down said, or the results were they had 91% of the people exercised. So that was a huge result. And something that I thought was neat is we talk a lot here with this group of different community organizations about how to get kids reading on grade level. And there's a lot of talk about how to get parents to read to their kids and what kind of things to get them to read their kids. And I thought this would be a really cool one where you could say, okay, I'm going to make a commitment, maybe even print up bookmarks or something where parents write down, we're going to read, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night at 7 p.m. In child's bedroom or something like that. So that way it'd be more like making a commitment. And I thought that was pretty cool and might be a neat application of this book. So we'll see if we're going to start doing something like that. And there was another one related that happened right here, which was he talked about habit stacking. So he talks about not just one habit, but can you group a couple of habits together to make them more effective? And he talked about this other one that had to do coincidentally with reading. And that was when you wake up and you make your bed, if you're the kind of person that makes your bed, I don't know how to make my bed. And then when you make your bed, if you put a book on your pillow, then that's a reminder if you want to try and read more at night that, so then when you get back there at night, now there's the book that's waiting for you to read. So another, I thought, a neat way. I even thought we maybe could create it. This group could create some merch of pillowcases with a little spot that would be like, book goes here for tonight. So we'll see. But I thought those were some neat ones. Connected to reading. And he talked about forget about motivation, focus on environment. So, if you're, it's not about how you're trying to motivate yourself, but it's about setting yourself up for the environment that's going to make you successful. Separating, if you had a home office, separating your home office from the place where you do your other living in the house so that you can focus on having an environment that's going to create success. It's not just about kind of telling yourself to do stuff. So, and environment is discussed in the book. Does anybody do anything to design your own environment to make it more successful? Anything that you do to, whether it's work or anything else you do to design a space so it's easier for you to do what's right? If you live with other people, if you're working in a shared space, anybody think about how environment can affect your habits or affect the habits of the people that use the library or anything else we've talked about?
I think about this all the time because I'm the accessibility coordinator for our library. So a lot, and we have a standalone building, so a lot of it is what do people need and what would make them comfortable and want to actually be in our building. Lighting, we have a silent area because I work at a health sciences library, so most of our people are graduate and professional students. So lighting, signs, temperature. We don't have a square box building, and actually that was a big thing, like marking the exits, because people would become lost in the building and kind of panic.
That's not great. Yeah.
And I am a neurodiverse person. I have ADHD, and I don't do real well without a pretty controlled environment.
Right.
So I'm very spoiled, and I have a private office. I can do what I want in. So
Yeah.
but I do try to think about proactively change things for the users if it's within our control and cheap.
Yeah, right. No, that's a great point, Sarah. That's really interesting. And yeah, having it's become something for us. And I wonder if anybody else has had that where so we get feedback from people about the library, and I'm sure you all do. And who else sees the, oh, it's so noisy in here. I thought libraries were supposed to be quiet. And we're like, no, libraries are supposed to be full of energy and excitement, which is true, but it's nice also to have some quiet spaces. So yeah, anything else about, thanks, Sarah, but that's good. And yeah, we have a couple buildings that people could probably get pretty lost in. So so yeah, good idea to remember that people need to know how to get out when they're ready to get out. But yeah, anything else so far about environment or about habit scorecards or starting new habits?
Well, we had our previous director decided to do the big tidy up, and had everybody had to go through and clean out. And then she sort of said, now everyone has to put everything away at the end of the day and have a clean desk. Well, that's a cultural change, right?
Yeah.
From the top down, not my mode. I'm like piles but I'll tell you what, it's changed my habits for the better. I mean, it wouldn't have been my choice. And if you looked behind some of my cabinet doors, there'd be a big old mess. But it's visually, it creates a starting place of my day. Every day, the surface is clean. So it was not like a habit I pursued, but the benefit has been pretty profound since then, of seeing how much better if I just have a clear space. And I do it on my desktop, where I do probably like everybody else, do tons of screenshotting, and I download stuff. But grabbing all that and just putting it in a folder that has like desktop. I mean, I probably should throw it all away, but I move it so that visually I don't look at it all. It's on a folder. So those are just two kind of digital landscape, but also the desk landscape. Yeah.
That is very cool, Evelyn. It's neat that, yeah, it's neat. So the cleaning up of the physical space also led you to kind of do the same thing in the computer space too.
I did that on my desktop anyway. Like I was
okay.
Did, interestingly, but I never had tangibly made it, a thing.
Yeah.
On my desk.
Really...
I like my desk better now that it's clean when I can.
Yeah. That's nice. That's very nice. Danielle, I saw your mic was open. Was it just open? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Evelyn, on the desk. That's kind of been one of the ones. Well, I have a very small desk, and hopefully we just ordered new desks, and I'll have a little bit more room to like actually breathe. That's why mine all gets piled up with papers, because it's very small, and I have like 2 monitors, so it's like there's no room to write. So I am looking forward to having a little bit of
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah. And I don't use this. I have a standing desk that I don't use probably enough as a standing desk. I use it as a sitting down desk. But the nice thing about the standing desk in a way is it forces you not to have much there, because there's not that much space. So and it lifts you up off of where all this other crap is. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So next section is about the make it attractive law of behavior change. So this one it starts off with some things about dopamine. And I think anybody, whenever you read a book about habits and reactions, dopamine always gets a big starring role. And talked about in the book, he talks about it's not the actual experience, it's the anticipation of the experience that causes the dopamine hit. So when you're gambling, if you're addicted to gambling, you don't get the spike of dopamine when you place a bet. You get the spike before you place the bet, when you're about to place the bet, when you're about to participate. And he talked pretty neat about ABC using this on one of their nights. So they had Thursday night on ABC for a while. This was back when the book was written, so a few years back. There were 3 of the Shonda Rhimes shows that were on ABC on Thursday night. There was Grey's Anatomy, Scandal, and How to Get Away with Murder. Anybody watch How to Get Away with Murder? Has anybody watched that? I watched some of it. It's a pretty good show. So what they would say is like, how they promoted it was make some popcorn, drink some red wine, and relax and watch these 3 shows. And as they did that week after week, people would start to just get in the idea of Thursday nights they were going to relax. And people reported that they were more relaxed on Thursday nights because that's what they were doing. They were getting ready to relax. So it's not about that. It's not about the habit. It's about the anticipation. So he talked about another habit stacking formula, and in the same way. And it was after a habit that you do, I will do something that I need. And then after the habit I need, I'll do something that I want. So this was how to kind of get yourself to a reward of a habit, but do some other things in the way that would get you to what you need. So after one of the examples was after I get my morning coffee, I'll say one thing that I'm grateful for. So the habit that I currently do is get coffee. I'll say one thing I'm grateful for, the need for gratitude. And then after I say one thing I'm grateful for, then I'll read the news. So, reading the news is the habit that you want. Getting coffee is the habit you do. And then in the middle, you put the habit you need. So it kind of, again, builds up this stream of anticipation of you're going to get to read the news because you're going to do the other 2 things. And talks about fixing the causes of bad habits, changing your language from this is something that I have to do versus this is something that I get to do. And then after that, he talks about how long it takes to form a new habit, because a lot of people ask that, like, how long does it take for me to form a new habit? And it's not about length. It's about how many times you repeat something. So there's not a magic formula of how long it takes. There are studies that, that we see and hear about 21 days it takes to make a new habit, or, some of them are 7 weeks it takes to start a new habit. But it's really not about, there's not that magic formula. It's about how many repetitions you have. And the more repetitions, the closer you'll get to having that new habit. So Evelyn, the more you clean off your desk regularly, then, the more it is. And maybe it'll take a week or maybe it'll take 2. The more you repeat it, then it starts to just become that new habit. And talking about how to get new habits, how to start new habits, he talks about, and I guess this is kind of common sense, but it's always nice to hear. It's looking at the law of least effort. So you don't try and start new habits when you're in a really high friction environment. You don't try to start you don't try to start a diet when you are planning to go out with friends that night and have dinner together. You don't try to start a habit of concentration when your space is filled with all kinds of distractions. So try and find those things that can get you the least effort so you don't have to do that. And this was another question, and it'd be great to talk about this. Has anybody ever tried to, and I think we all do this, try to break a bad habit by relying solely on motivation and willpower? What happens? What do you learn? Why is habit more reliable than motivation and willpower? Does anybody have any thoughts about that? Like, just forcing it through. Anybody ever tried to quit smoking? I did years and years ago, and it's not all about willpower. It's about just taking the time and building it up. But anybody else have any thoughts about how that plays into things? Breaking a bad habit with motivation, and how that works and how that doesn't work. Or about stacking habits too.
Well, I
Lisa.
well, just say I haven't read the book, so I don't
That's
know
all right.
if he talks about this, but in my experience, that just pure motivation alone isn't enough.
Yes.
That you do have to change your environment, and, in my case, throw out the cookies and the candies if I'm starting a
Yeah.
diet, but yeah, I think the problem with I'll just motivate my way through this issue is that there are all of these outside forces working against you.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know if he gets into that or not, but I suspect he does.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some talking about, Lisa, about thank you, about things that are distracting you, things that are getting in your way, things that are things that are trying to keep you from doing that. And, even things like setting yourself up so that he talks about like going to the gym. And if your gym is not, say, on the way from home to work, and you want to try and go to gym in the morning, where you're setting yourself up for, making this a whole chore and making this a whole difficult thing, because there's a lot of other things that then you have to do and figure out so you can get to the gym. So, how can you kind of do that? So, and this comes into the what he calls the 2-minute rule, which is sounds like a pretty neat way to start some new habits. So, he says, when you're trying to start a new habit, whatever it is that you're doing, just do the part of it that takes less than 2 minutes. So, instead of trying to start the entire thing, just start a little bit. So if you want to read more before bed each night, don't think I have to read this book, or I have to read so many chapters, or I have to do this. Just read a page. Can you read a page before you go to bed? Read a page, put it down. You've done that. You can build more later, but just do that quickly. If you want to do 30 minutes of yoga, don't worry about committing necessarily right away to doing the 30 minutes of yoga. Just saying, I'm going to take out the yoga mat and lay it out. There's 2 minutes. You've done something that's further along than just ignoring the whole thing or doing part of it. And maybe you'll continue on and do some more, and that's fine, but you just commit to just something that's 2 minutes. If you want to run 3 miles, just tie up your running shoes, just get focused on that little part of that habit that is going to get you something. And then maybe if you run, for 10 minutes, then great. If all you do that day is tie on your running shoes and walk around, you've done something that's gotten you closer to where you were before. And the one other thing he applies this to is journaling. So he talks about journaling, and he's got a 1-sentence journal, I think, where you just write 1 sentence about your day. And if you just kind of use that, and if you can just keep doing that over and over, then eventually, if you keep that up, you'll build up that journaling habit. You'll build up that habit. So, it doesn't have to be commit to everything. You can build things incrementally. And again, it's just about that 1% improvement, that little bit closer. I years ago, I lost a lot of weight on Weight Watchers, and that has changed. But for that, the thing that the instructor talked about, which was really cool, was what can I do? What can I do today so that I will, have made a little more progress before bedtime? What's just the one little thing that I can do, whether it's just, changing something, making a different decision, just one little thing that you can do so that you can, go to bed knowing that you've done something. So, so it's not about, again, committing to the big giant change of habit. It's the small changes over time that then can compound and add up to something. The next section is on make it satisfying. Or did anybody have anything they want to talk about before we move away from that? About 2-minute rule. I could see some stuff over in the
I just kind of had a moment.
Yeah, Christina.
Jump in, Chris. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that,
please.
How would I get my public libraries to make that 2-minute rule about adding marketing into their daily habit? So what is something that I could create for them to say, maybe in the form of that bullet journal or something, but it's so working with all these public libraries in our state, how do I make them ritualize a habit of when something happens, how do I record that, jot it down, and think that I can use, that's a marketing item, or that's an advocacy, something that I need to make a note of because I can use that. So how do I make that something that they do daily, because I feel like there's a lot of failure as far as, where we are in our state, as far as, you've got to keep putting stuff in front of people as far as advocacy and this marketing is for what libraries do. Anyway, that's when I had a little moment there.
That's a great one, Christina.
It is a good one.
Now, does anybody have any suggestions for Christina about a little thing? Is there a little less than 2-minute thing that people could be encouraged to do?
I have a hammer and I use it, right? Like I'm a designer and a marketer. So one of the things I think about are tools that I can provide that will help that 2-minute moment, right? So if it's somebody at the desk trying to answer a question, if I have, I don't have a lot of printed materials, but we have a new building project. And I created a bookmark about it. And so it has a QR code on it. It's got pictures, architect sketches. It's not like I've reinvented the wheel here, but it supports the moment more than I feel like anyone's going to necessarily read all of it. It's more like when I'm talking, the studio expansion project, here's some information about it. We're having a conversation, but it supports that moment. Do you know what I mean? So I like where you're going with that thought. And maybe that's a way to talk to our colleagues about what we already have as resources, but how to frame a moment, or, we're trying to facilitate their conversation with customers, because I'm not down there talking to customers usually.
Yeah. Danielle?
Yeah, I know for us, when we're having a lot of pushback with masks required, or we're trying to give staff the tools to deal with these difficult patron interactions, and maybe when we're talking about book banning and challenging and things like that, we printed out our collection development policy, have it at every desk, and even just have that one sentence highlighted, the most important thing, because when you're in that moment, your mind goes blank, it all, but the adrenaline of the moment, and a couple of our managers, they have printed that out, just highlighted, okay, here's your phrase, this is your phrase that you say, and if you can't remember anything else, say this, and if you can't remember anything else, read it and hand them this packet and tell them to come into the admin office, whatever that is. So
that's great. Yeah, just little things like that. I think those are great. Another thing, Christina, that I would think of that I've always really wanted and had a hard time getting is what if their habit was just write down, just every day, write down what was the top or most unusual question you got today, because knowing those kind of things to me is part of marketing, because it's all about interviewing people for what is the problem that they're trying to solve? What are the things they're trying to do? So I would love to have a record of what were the questions that people asked. And rather than asking them to write down every single time you encountered a customer, what was it? But just, can you just kind of mixing this journaling idea with this 2-minute habit of, can you just start to write down just what was the question you got? Maybe that's something that might work. I might try that here too. So, oh yeah.
We did a thing here connected to our strategic planning, where I put out a Google Docs spreadsheet that we called the no document.
Yes.
And it
Love
was
yes.
every time you had to tell a patron no, you would mark that and mark what they had asked about.
Yeah.
And then the flip side of that, I also had one out that was I called it the kudos document, where every time you heard something good or a patron said, hey, this really helped me, or I really like this, you wrote it down.
Yeah.
And we had some people do it.
Sure.
And some people, and I get it. It's the heat of the moment, and you move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And it's hard to remember to go to that Google spreadsheet. So it fell off after a while. So we're trying to figure out another way to capture those stories at the front.
Yes.
Line, and make it easy enough for them to do it. And again, when they are faced with 3 people in front of them and they need to just really quick get that down.
Yeah.
I've toyed with the idea of putting pre-printed Post-it notes down at the service desk that say something like, hey, promote this program this week.
Yeah.
But honestly, I haven't had time to do it. So maybe that's my 2-minute deal there.
I like the pre-printed Post-its. I like that. I love the no. Yeah. And Lisa, that's kind of what you were, I mean, right. You were talking about, like, we say no a lot, and we kind of think about what we don't do. And yeah, like the one question we get all the time, and I know you all do too. Well, unless you offer the service, we don't have fax machines. So we always get people to say, do we have fax machines? So it's interesting to know, how often are they getting those questions, and what are they doing to send those away? So Christina, did you have something else? I know you were kind of just reacting when we were talking, but yeah.
Sorry, I was having a moment. It was like, lots of ideas flowing. I'm taking notes, and
that's great.
But I also have to go.
Okay, no problem.
Fantastic. Woo,
yes.
Wonderful. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you very much for joining, and you can watch the rest when we put out the video. We'll see you soon. So yeah, and so running into this last part of this is the 4th of the make it the behavior change laws, and this is make it satisfying. Some of the things, again, I think we've heard before. If you were here, or if you have read Power of Habit and some of these other books, they talk about Febreze, and Febreze wasn't just about eliminating the odor, it was about adding back in this scent. So it gave this finishing, it gave this satisfaction, it gave something a little different. And chewing gum, like first it wasn't great until they added some mint and fruit flavors, and then it became something. Toothpaste, they give you the tingle, which doesn't do anything different, it just makes you feel like something's happening. So and I did see before I keep going, let me see, we have some things going on here. So yes, no doc, a bullet journal, daily successes journal. That's a great name for it. Christina gave it. Evelyn, no, our scanners are not set up for faxing. I don't know why. But they have never set those up, and we are dying to get them to set it up because it's such a common thing that people ask. That's the same thing, Lisa. Ours is set up for scanning, but not set up for faxing. And I really think faxing goes back to a couple of very old notions about privacy, and what if somebody faxes something and it goes out there. Sarah, you refer people to your public library, so I'm guessing then your library does have faxing. Oh, it charges $1 a page. Yeah. Faxing, while it's hard to believe that technology still exists, it's certainly something in heavy demand. And you would think it would make sense for somebody to walk into a library and be able to fax something, because you can scan it. So, and that's the thing, Lisa, is where do you send people? And people are sending to wherever the closest places are that people can go and get something faxed. Free is better. Yeah, digital, free email faxing services. I've thought about that too, Evelyn. Are you talking about yeah, like there are online services that might be free for people to use. That would be my thought that I would recommend people do. Get on a public computer, go here, and you can fax this thing that you scanned. But yeah, so
The
yeah, it's
problem seems to be that there are some places that still require a fax. And I
it's
don't know if
right.
they didn't get the memo that the 80s were like several hundred years ago, but
I know.
there are offices and institutions that still require that. And I think
Yeah, I know.
so.
It seems archaic, but it is not, it does not seem like it's going away. It seems like medical is always going to be something that still requires, yeah, medical folks love their faxes. Yeah. And Kirsten, yes, if it's in sports, NFL signing day, yes. Yeah, email isn't HIPAA compliant, and yeah, that you're right. That is probably something that but maybe it's time to look at those HIPAA compliance again and see what it is. But yeah, as you can see, big issue, definitely, Mary. It's they still require fax documents. Hopefully we can. Hopefully we can get our scanners turned around. Hopefully anybody else can get your scanners turned around. So in this last section, and this is something else that kind of goes along so there's one thing and I think we've heard these two, where this example, somebody as a salesperson, and so they have a jar of paper clips on their desk and an empty jar on the other side, and every time they make a sales call they move a paper clip over, and there's a story of this one salesperson who did this and became very, very successful because it built up the habit of making sure that there's some visual way. So if you can have a visual of how you can move one thing from one place to another, or some sort of visual that you're continuing in habit, that's something that's very helpful. And again, tracking habits and tracking chains of habits. So that was another recommendation, was like Jerry Seinfeld writes a joke every day, and his goal is not to break the chain. He wants to, every single day, no matter what, he wants to write, at least one joke. So he has just a chain of jokes forever. And then some things in this chapter about making it satisfying, about tracking it after you do the thing, not before. So after you put your dish in the dishwasher, then you will track what you ate. So, making sure that it's done, and then you feel good about tracking the thing because it's been done. And I think we talked about this a little bit in the beginning, but yeah, it's this idea of a target or a goal. And he gets back into it in this chapter about when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. So, when tracking goes too far, when are you just tracking the thing and tracking the target, and you're not tracking the right measures, you're not improving things or increasing the power of the habit that you're creating. So this includes something like back to the scale. If you're focusing on the number on the scale when you're weighing, you may try and do some drastic things because all you're doing is focusing on the scale. And this was a problem with a lot of early weight loss programs, because that's all they focused on was the scale. So people might do crash diets and they might do other kinds of things because it was all about that number on the scale. But over the past several years, the idea has been to celebrate what they call non-scale victories. So, did you make a good decision? Did you do something good? So again, it gets back again away from that idea of just getting to the goal no matter what, whatever that goal is, we have to get there, and more about the process and what kind of things are you doing in your system. And the end of this one, he talks into this part of the book, he talks about having accountability partners. So, having somebody else, there's examples of people who will write every day and will have a partner keep them accountable for it. Saying things out loud and having somebody else kind of check what you're doing and just sharing what you're doing can make you more likely to build a good habit. And it doesn't even have to be somebody you know. There are ways to do this publicly. There's one person who his goal is to wake up at 5:55 every morning. And what he's done to set a accountability for that is he has a tweet scheduled to go out every day. And the tweet says, goes out at 6:10. And it says, it's 6:10 and I'm not up because I'm lazy. Reply to this for $5 via PayPal, limit of 5, assuming my alarm didn't malfunction. So that way he has to get up to turn that tweet off every morning, or he's going to lose $25 that day. So, interesting way to use the public to keep you accountable for something. But yeah, that's kind of the idea there. We're starting to run toward the end of our hour together. There's a part at the end about advanced tactics. Which were some other things that were kind of interesting, but overall that was Atomic Habits. That's the summary of Atomic Habits. Any other thoughts or questions or anything that we talked about that anybody has anything they want to talk a little more about or share?
I have to ask this.
Oh, you muted.
I have to ask this group if anybody else, I mean, the content, there's so much helpful here. And even I've heard him interviewed. He does a really good job with interviews. My background's also in design, book design. This is one of the worst design books I've ever seen. So I'm super curious what you all think. First of all, they must have spent what, $10 on it. And so they're making so much money. They're making so much money. They put nothing into the production of it. They purposely make it look like, I don't understand it. It doesn't even look like a book. It looks like a workbook. So, the line length is not right. The letting, none of it uses no design principles. So I'm just really curious if anybody else, I find it even hard to spend time with because I find it so distracting. That's me, but does anyone else notice that? It's like an anti-book, right? Maybe that's part of the appeal for some people who don't want to sit down and read a book. Maybe
it looks very academic. Yeah, Danielle.
I don't know. I think it must be your trained eye. I did not. The graphs and stuff sometimes were a little bit hard to.
Wow.
It looks, and so it looked. After you said that, because you said that on social media, and I was like, let me see, because I listened to the book, I didn't read it in paper. I have it, so I have since looked at it. But I see what you're saying about it. Looks textbooky, like it looks really textbooky, like not all these books do look like that, which is interesting. I even found, like, I don't want to, he's smart and he's got a lot of good stuff, and he certainly talks about a lot of things that are also in self-published.
That's what I was going to ask, because I didn't, I read in ebook format, but when you held it up, I'm like, oh, it looks like they did it at their Kinko's.
Yeah. It's not
that Kinko's is a thing anymore, but anyway.
Yeah. But that when he did it, he probably may have been Kinko's. But no, this one is published by, the current version is Penguin Random House, but it's interesting. It's interesting, Evelyn. I know. Yeah, it's
I think it might even be print on demand. It
could be
thin paper. There's no margins. Like no margin, like a gutter. There's no gutter.
Oh yeah, that version is like, wild.
Is over 2 million copies sold. It tells me right here. So maybe somebody at some point, I just can't imagine it going through publishing, marketing, everything, and getting to this format in my hands. I was so shocked when it was, I passed it out at a manager's meeting as we read it here, our management team.
That copy you have does look really weird, Evelyn.
It's the size of a workbook. It's
a very strange trade paper size.
And the fonts and the spacing, everything about it. Maybe there was a problem when they custom printed it.
Yeah, maybe it took a while for them to get back to it. So yeah, it was interesting. But yeah, I found it interesting. I found his story interesting and how he got where he did. And I'm very happy for him. He's very successful. And I think he's got some good ideas. But I don't know. Yeah, it was kind of interesting. It didn't have the same I got a lot out of it, but it didn't have quite the same largesse as some of the other authors that write some similar books like this. It didn't have that, not that they all need to. But yeah, but it's interesting. I mean, and listening to it, it was fine. I mean, it was, he read it himself, and yeah, it was pretty good. So we're almost at the end. Next month, February, we'll be reading Library Wayfinding and Signage. Mark Aaron Polgar will be here to talk about the book with us. So let's see. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All right, Evelyn, pick a number between 1 and 10.
7.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Kirsten. So Kirsten wins a copy of Library Wayfinding and Signage by Mark Aaron Polgar. Yay. Yeah, so next month we'll be talking about that. And does anybody have any books, if well, we don't really have time for it right now, but if you have any books that you've already read and you're like, boy, I wish this group would read it because it'd be fun to talk together, please suggest those. Lisa, did you have something before we go?
Yeah, if that
Or
is
Lisa
Mark
Lockhart,
Allen
sorry.
Polgar's book, where is that available? Is that on Amazon or
Mark's book? You can get it on the Amazon. Yeah, and I tend not to put up a lot of these books, but this is a big one. It's expensive, so you may want to see about even, I don't know how quickly you can getting it in your library or from in a library, because yeah, it's a valuable book. Anybody else have anything else for the good of the group before we get rolling off and back into our next thing? I wish we would have done our Shavasana. That was a lot of fun last time, but I didn't pay attention to the clock. Take 5 minutes for yourself and sit quietly. I highly recommend it. I want to make that a habit. I haven't done it yet, but well, thank you all so much. Thanks for participating. Thanks for coming. Thanks for reading the book. And if you didn't read the book, give it a shot. There's some good summaries out there, and look forward to seeing you all again next month. Keep an eye on your mailbox. I'll be sending out a survey for feedback very soon. And thanks again. Talk to y'all soon. Have a great month. See you again. Bye.